Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today I will show you how you can calculate the takeoff distance using the POH of a Cessna 172. I will explain to you how you can read these tables and how you can calculate it based on various conditions like the wind, the temperature. So let's start. I will link up the POH in the description if you want to use it. You should scroll down and you will find this section, this page, which says takeoff distance, maximum weight 2,300 pounds. But you also have this, if you scroll down, 2,100 pounds and 1,900. Okay, so look up for this one and let's read together. So this table is valid if you meet these conditions: flaps up, full throttle prior to brake release, paved, level and dry runway, and a zero wind. But as we know, zero wind in real life is not always met. Maybe there are some cases, but not always. So that's why the notes are here, because real life is not perfect. So short field technique as specified in section 4. Yes, this is a short field takeoff. Prior to takeoff from fields above 3000 feet elevation, the mixture should be leaned to give maximum RPM in a full throttle static run-up. In our case, we'll use the airports below 3000 feet, so this will not be a point at which we should stay. So let's jump to point 3, which says decrease distances 10% for each 9 knots headwind. For operation with tailwinds up to 10 knots, increase distances by 10% for each 2 knots. This one is the most important one because winds can influence our ground roll a lot. And when I mean a lot, I mean a lot. So this is very, very important. And also this one. For operation on a dry grass runway, increase distances by 15% of the ground roll. As we know, grass runway has a higher friction than a paved one, so that's why the distance increases by 15%. Okay, so let's jump to the table. First, it says the weight here at the first column. Let's see our conditions. We are a Cessna 172, 2,000 pounds. So 2,000 pounds, you can look for 2,000 pounds, but you cannot find it. Where you can find it? This is a trick. So these calculations are for an aircraft which weighs 1,900, and this is for the 2,100 one. So 2,000 is basically right here in the middle. So to calculate it for 2,000 pounds aircraft, we have to do a medium between the values of the 2,100 aircraft and 1,900 aircraft. I'll explain to you and it will be easier on the way. So let's calculate it for the 2,100 first. We are at Innsbruck, which has an elevation of 1,900 feet. Let's look here, 1,900 feet. It's very, very close to 2,000. So we'll select 2,000 for this one. Always aim for a higher number because it's safer. So 2,000 feet elevation. The temperature is 0 degrees Celsius. This one right here is the column for 0 degrees Celsius. If it was 40 degrees Celsius outside, but in Innsbruck, I don't know. I don't know really, you cannot get those temperatures. But if it was that high temperature, you should look on this column. Okay, but 0 degrees Celsius are the current conditions. So we'll look at this part of the table. 2,000 feet elevation, and if we cross check here, the ground roll is 700 feet. We also see here the total takeoff total distance to clear a 50 feet obstacle. What does it mean? Let's explain it real quick. This is the ground roll, which is basically the distance the airplane travels on the ground with the wheels on the ground. And this is the total distance to clear a 50 feet obstacle. So this one right here, if you have an obstacle, maybe a tree, maybe a building at the end of the runway, which is 50 feet high, 50 feet tall, you should use this one instead, this one instead of the ground roll. It's safer, okay? But in our case at Innsbruck, we do not have any obstacles at the end of the runway, so we'll look for the ground roll. But I hope you understood this concept. Okay, so let's jump back. So we'll use 700 feet ground roll. This will be for the 2,100 pounds aircraft, but remember, our aircraft is actually lighter. Let's look also for the 1,900 pounds aircraft. 2,000 elevation, right here, 560. So for a 2,000 pounds aircraft, it will basically be the medium between these two values between 700 and 560. Let's bring up the calculator and do the median between those two. So 560 plus 700 divided by 2 is 630 feet. This is the ground roll for our weight, for a 2,000 pounds weight. But remember, this is the ground roll in perfect conditions, in zero wind. As we see, we also have wind blowing from 120 degrees, 12 knots. So I will also link this tool to you in the descriptions, because it's also very, very important and useful. So yeah, we'll take off from runway 08. Let's select it here, 08. Wind direction 120 degrees, and the speed was 2, so 12 knots. There aren't any gusts. So as you can see, we have headwind and crosswind. These are the components. This one is what really matters, the headwind one, which is close to 9 knots. And we can, if we bring up the manual here, it says decrease distances 10% for each 9 knots headwind. We have a 9 knots headwind, so that distance of 630 feet should be decreased by 10%. How do we do that? So let's find what 10% means of 630. So 630 divided by 100 multiplied by 10 is 63. 63 is 10% of 630 feet. So we have to do this, 630 minus 63. We have to subtract that because the distance decreases due to the headwind. Okay, that means 567 feet. Okay, so this is actually the correct ground roll for our aircraft in these wind conditions and also these temperatures. 567. Okay, let's do another case here. So the wind speed now is the wind is blowing from 290 degrees at 7 knots. Let's put it in the calculator. 290.7. This one right here is actually a tailwind. We'll use the same runway 08. So now we'll have a tailwind of 6 knots. Remember, what does the manual say? For operation with tailwinds up to 10 knots, increase distances by 10% for each 2 knots. So we have 6 knots of tailwind. We'll have to divide 6 by 2. We'll get 3. And 3 we'll have to multiply with 10. So that will basically mean a 30% increase in our ground roll. Okay, so let's first it was 630. Okay, 630 with 0 wind. Now the wind is actually tailwind of 6 knots, so it will increase by 30%. Let's calculate 30% from 630 feet. So 630 divided by 100 multiplied by 30, which is 189. At 630 feet, we'll actually have to add 189 because the distance increases. Remember, the wind is pushing now. The wind is pushing our aircraft, so that will mean a higher ground roll. So 630 plus 189, which gives us a value of 819 feet. So this will be our ground roll with a tailwind. I hope you understood. Now, let's switch the airports. Let's switch the scenario. We also have a Cessna 172, which is 2,300 pounds, so the maximum takeoff weight. Okay, we are departing from Tuzla Aerodrome, which is has an elevation of 164 feet, basically at sea level. Between 164 is closer to 0 than 1000, so we'll use sea level this time. The wind is blowing from 040 degrees 18 knots, temperature 25 degrees Celsius, and right now we are taking off from a grass runway, runway 04, which is a grass runway, so higher friction, remember. Okay, let's look at the table. 2,300 pounds, so perfect. Sea level, okay. Temperature 25. Again, we cannot meet the 25 marks, so it's something between 20 and 30. It's actually the medium between those two. So at 20 degrees Celsius we have a ground roll of 835, and at 30 degrees Celsius we have a ground roll of 895. So we'll have to do the medium between these two. Again, let's see, 835 plus 895 divided by 2, 865. This is the ground roll at 25 degrees Celsius, but again, in zero wind conditions. Now let's add the winds. So the wind is blowing from 040 degrees, 18 knots. Let's use this one. It will be basically a crosswind, a direct headwind. So 04, 040, wind speed 12, I think, no, 18, I guess, yeah, 18, yeah. Okay, so as you can see, this is straight headwind. Perfect. Now let's look here. What does it say? Decrease distances 10% for each 9 knots headwind. Now we have an 18 knots headwind. That will basically mean double. Okay, so it will not be 10%, it will be 20% decrease in ground roll. So 865 feet is the ground roll in zero wind. Now let's add the winds. So 20% from 865, let's see, 865 divided by 100 multiplied with 20 is 173. Now we'll have to subtract from 865 173, and let's see what is the value. 865 minus 173, which is 692 feet in these wind conditions. Okay, but remember, this is a grass runway, so the distance will increase by 15% because of the higher friction. So now let's calculate what is 15% from this one. So 692 divided by 100 multiplied with 15, 104 feet. So we'll have to increase the distance. So at 692 we'll have to add 104. So 692 plus 104, which will give us a ground roll of 796 feet. So this one is corrected for the wind and also because of the grass runway. This is actually the true one, and you should really pay attention to these conditions because, as you can see, this can vary a lot, and this can save your life. Okay, I really hope you understood. very well. I tried my best to explain it to you in the easiest way possible. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to write them in the comment section. And if you like this video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and see you at the next one. Bye.